Okay, I guess we can open it up for questions for either Richard or Terry. So you want to start out? Marcus?
Okay. I'll try to make this brief. This might be a little bit of a loaded question, but I guess it's really how much of the goals of the conservative movement are necessarily good. Certainly in the Middle East, it seems like we can say how bad the policy is, but it seems like Heritage Foundation, American Enterprise Institute, and the conservative base were the biggest supporters of that. And then on the issue of immigration, at least in my office, which deals with immigration, I would say, and it's very conservative oriented, at least 25 to 35% of all phone calls are coming from people who identify themselves as Democrats and saying how great what's happening. And at the same time, when you come to and I wonder, it doesn't seem like the conservative movement ever did anything about immigration until the base created that through groups like the Minutemen or Lou Dobbs. And on the Lou Dobbs note, who is definitely not a conservative, my office wrongly gets calls for a certain presidential candidate who's running on immigration, who's also very fiscally conservative, and a lot of those calls are very negative from people who say, oh, I completely agree with on immigration, but you're going to take away my Social Security, you're going to take away my Medicare, etc. So I guess the question is really, can we really say that the conservative movement has driven the agenda for the right reasons on any of these issues? I mean, so the question is this really, should we fix the GOP, or do we really need to fix the conservative movement's priorities?
Let me just say one thing about the foreign policy. I don't think that a conservative can embrace George Bush's foreign policy. I think it's fundamentally at odds with the conservative vision of even humanity. I think one thing that conservatives believe in is that human beings are fallen, they're imperfect, they're going to pursue self-interest. And that is really at the root of a realistic foreign policy, which understands that nations, like people, are going to pursue interest. And in doing that, they're going to do violent and evil things. So they have to be checked and balanced. And prudence is the guiding principle in foreign policy. What you want to do is, at all times, minimize the potential damage to your nation and your people. And George Bush's foreign policy is utopian. It doesn't recognize the fallen nature of man, which is embedded in our own Constitution through the system of checks and balances. So just as an intellectual matter, I think conservative leaders have to combat the Bush foreign policy. And as a political matter, I think it's unsustainable democratically, because people over time will not pay the costs that Bush's foreign policy would impose on them, given that they see it's not clearly and directly related to their own interests and the well-being of their own families. So I hope that answers one part of your question.
I second the compliment that Terry paid me earlier, and I endorse everything he said. Just briefly, you said something about, can we fix the Republican Party? Today, I think that's a mistake. I just don't think that it's a mistake to focus on the Republican Party. As I said earlier, forget the Republican Party. We need to go back and focus on ourselves. When we were launching the movement back in the early '60s, we focused on our organizations. We started book clubs. We started political action committees and foundations, and we ran our candidates. And we ran candidates in the Democratic Party. I worked for George Wallace to try to pull the Democratic Party my way and throw a monkey wrench in the Democratic Party. We went out there and we focused on our issues, our agenda, and let the Republican Party take care of itself. At this time, along the lines of what Terry was saying, I think conservatives should withhold support from all of the top tier candidates. Not one of them was there for us when we needed them in the last 10 or 12 years. None one of them is a conservative, certainly. We lose all leverage when we support them and endorse them. Let them continue to bid for us. They're bidding every day. I hear another proposal from one of them to get conservative support. So let that contest continue. But I think we ought to withhold support from all of the Republican national committees, most state committees. They haven't been doing our bidding. Why should we be there for them? We should be challenging almost every single establishment candidate out there. All of the Republican leaders should be challenged for office. Lindsey Graham should be challenged.